Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. I'm Jared Stark. I'm the Grand Poobah at Billet Media. And I've started this YouTube channel to hopefully provide some useful content to people who are looking at either getting into the film and television production business, the video production business, who are looking to do social media videos, or just looking to make a name for themselves, or more importantly, maybe make some income in the film and television production business. Today, I am very blessed and pleased to have with me Onno Weeda, who is who's a fairly well-known cinematographer, DOP, and camera guy extraordinaire in the Toronto area.
They are a delivery and laundering operation all in one. So this is what we know. This is not a pharmaceutical drug. All right, let's move.
He's worked on shows like In the Dark, worked on the Umbrella Academy, and Onno can tell us a little bit more about his background and what he's done, both to get into the business and also what he does now on a regular basis. So, Onno, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the business?
Oh my gosh, that's you know what? Actually, no, it's actually kind of an interesting story. It was around 1990-ish. I was just coming off of, I was in grade 10 of high school, and I was living overseas. And I found at the time I'd come home and like on home leave, and I'd tell my family and friends, and I'd say, oh yeah, so I encountered this and this, like I was living in Indonesia at the time, and I'd tell stories about living in Indonesia. And it found like as soon as I said this story, they didn't believe me. Yet, as soon as I was able to have a picture, and back then it was all, analog film. So it was, basically a print, and I held up a print and I showed them a picture. Then all of a sudden they believed me. And so all of a sudden they're going, okay, so you know what? People don't believe the stories I tell because it could be fictional. Yet if it's a hard proof picture, because back then Photoshop didn't exist. Photo manipulation wasn't even a thing. Right. It's like, okay, yeah, proof's in the pudding. So I was like, you know what? There we go. That's kind of what I want to do. I want to be a storyteller, but visual. And yeah, try to combine those two. You sort of lean into being a cameraman. So early on, I was looking at trying to just be a cameraman. I was thinking more just broadcast, TV. So coming back to Toronto, like places like CTV were the places that jumped up. And I was like, oh, right, cool. Music videos, sort of man on the street kind of interview kind of stuff is what I was looking at.
Run and gun, which has kind of become the norm now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And so I went to Sheridan College in Oakville, studied there for 3 years. And the one thing I did is after the first year, during the summer, I sort of did my work placement. And through the dean of school, he hooked me up with two other camera guys who had graduated 2 or 3 years before I did, or at that present time. And they were corporate video guys. So I started with them, following them along and just assisting. I remember one of the first days, guy comes up and goes, hey, will you go grab the Apple box out of the truck? And I go, absolutely.
What's an Apple box?
Yeah. Exactly. I was like, I was like, oh my God, I can't admit I don't know. So of course I know what an Apple box is.
Right.
So I walked to this truck and oh my God, you know what? I walked back with my head down, complete shame. I had no idea what an Apple box was. I was actually thinking, is it more like a little box with like tangerines in it, but maybe for apples or something? Anyway, so that's where I learned very quickly going, you know what, if you don't know, just tell people. People are so willing to help out and help you out. But if you're going to lie to them, you're going to get busted.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's the Apple box story. So I did that for a summer. And by the end of the summer, it was 3 months of the summer.
And how old would you have been at this time?
This would have been around 94. So I was 20. I was 20 working, corporate videos as an assistant and doing infomercials as well as an assistant, just sort of, let's say a bit more than, a PA. So I wasn't, duties of like grabbing a coffee wasn't my part. but, helping out with the camera, reloading the cameras, sorry, not the corporate videos, but the infomercials were 3 or 4 cameras. So I'd sometimes be holding the cables, making sure that the cameras could move on their pedestals, or in charge of changing tapes and stuff like that. So more, I don't want to call it glorified, but yeah, upgraded PA, but dedicated straight to camera. And I loved it. I mean, at the time, I think I was making maybe $250 a day kind of thing. And I was sitting there going, wow, I'll be honest, it was a struggle to go back to school. Because at a certain point, I was working 5 days a week. I'm sitting there going, my God, on a good month, I'm making like $4,000. Why go back to school?
Yeah.
And I remember having the conversation with my parents, and they said, no, we definitely want you to go back to school. So, yeah, okay, you know what? I followed their footsteps. I listened to them. I went back to school. But it was a struggle. I think I had 3 or 4 days of classes, and then the other 3 days, if possible, I was working. It was a great balance of doing stuff out in the practical world and then getting the theoretical class, knowledge in class. So went to Sheridan, graduated, and worked as an assistant for a little while in that world. Then slowly but slowly, I was like, you know what, I want to work on larger and bigger projects. And so then at that point in time, I was like, okay, I should start going into more like music videos and start working with film. So I started working as an assistant. I started loading 16 mil, 35 mil projects. I did a handful of little shorts, even sometimes they were like little small featurettes that I worked basically as a volunteer, as a camera assistant, loading. And from there, it's just all of a sudden networking and contact. And then from one thing triggered to the next thing I know, I'm seconding on commercials and on music videos. And it was like, wow, this is fantastic. As the project started getting more and more elaborate, it was like I was loving it. I was having a great time. So flash forward to 2005. I had just gotten married, and my wife and I wanted to have kids, and my wife got pregnant. It was meant to be. And then I was like, okay, now I've been assisting. I've done some firsting as a focus puller on some movies of the week and TV series. And I was like, okay, I got to upgrade, because otherwise I'm afraid I'll sort of be, not to call it a rut, but I'll be stuck in where I am, because I'm going to have overhead. I'm going to have family commitments that I got to make X amount of money. So I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to upgrade. I want to start shooting or operating. So that summer, my God, I sat at home. I got tons of calls to work as a focus puller, and I had to turn them all down. I said, no, guys, I can't do it. And I had to stick to my guns, because otherwise I was afraid I was going to fall back into the rut. After that, as the kids were born, one of the first doors that opened up for me as a shooter was actually a lifestyle show. I think it was called Sarah's House with Sarah Richardson. It was a design show. There was a main camera. I was the second camera, and I was basically the camera that shot everything, basically watched paint dry. I didn't have too much interaction with Sarah. It was more just with the contractors, with the stuff in the background. It's like, okay, yep, this room's being painted. Let's go watch it, and it was kind of fun. I was able to get positives out of it, going, yeah, there's a very boring way to document a room being painted, or you could sit there going, hey, let me be creative. And oh my God, I think I drove the painters nuts. Yeah, can you dip that paintbrush in the paint bucket again? Mm-hmm. Can you do this? Can you do this? And just, getting all sorts of different kind of angles. So I loved it. Had a great time. Now, while I was doing that, I was still trying to, get into let's say larger productions. So I was always trying to keep my foot in the door with, TV series and stuff like that.
And how did you do that? Like what did you do to keep your foot in the door with those TV series? Was there anything specific that you did?
Yeah. So, the main thing, what this industry is, and I'm sure, I only know this industry, so I'm assuming every industry is this way, but a lot of it is just networking. It's who is what's going to, is that person's going to get you the next gig. So yeah, I was constantly hustling, but it was like I would say almost on a monthly basis. The few people I knew that were working in the unionized dramatic world, I kept calling them up saying, hey guys, just want to touch base with you. Internet was happening, email was happening, but it was still a lot of people were still phone calls. So I'd be calling them up and just saying, hey, just want to touch base with you. Just remind you that I exist. Kind of brutal to say that, but I used that line quite a few times when I got a voicemail going, hey, I'm still around. I still live. I'm still alive. Just give me a shout. Just saying it straight out, saying the reason for my call. So it was a lot of networking. And then, interestingly enough, there was a show that I was working on as the C camera operator. It was called Happy Town, and the DP had just heard that on a show called B and Erica, there was some shuffling around, and the B camera operator was leaving. And in that process, also the DP was leaving, and there was a new DP coming in. And so this was Friday afternoon. I don't know how one DP knew about the other DP. Anyway, I got the heads up. I called that new incoming DP on Friday afternoon. I said, hey, I hear you got a new gig starting Monday. Congratulations. I also hear there's an operator leaving. If you need someone, keep me in mind. And honestly, I think the phone rang 30 seconds later, and I had the gig. So it was
Awesome.
honestly at the right time, right place, right time is what got me that gig. And still, that original DP that tipped me off, I'm forever grateful. So I ended up doing that. It was only for five weeks. But then I think that ended in November. And then come January, the A camera operator, an operator, Sean Jensen, who I've worked with quite a bit, calls me up and he goes, hey, I got a series going on. I'd love for you to be the B camera operator. And I was like, oh my God. So this is how it's happening. It's just one thing, do a great job. It'll lead to the next, to the next. So it was all about networking and just complete fluke. So I did that for numerous different series, worked with him, worked with other people. It's basically all just, connections. Did that for a number of years. And then I was like, you know what? I want to start focusing on DPing. So I started telling the DPs on the shows that I was getting onto, I was going, hey, I know I'm being hired as the B camera operator or the A camera operator, but if there are any second unit DPing opportunities, please, keep me in mind. And honestly, all of a sudden, it felt like that's all I had to do was just ask. Because then I was on a set. It was a show called Damien. We're shooting a scene, and all of a sudden DP comes up and goes, hey, oh no, I'm going to go off with the A camera operator to the next set. We're running a little behind, but will you mind staying behind and just finishing the scene for us? Just get those inserts that we need to do. And absolutely. So I stayed behind, did a handful of inserts. I mean, the nice thing was, you know what? I walked onto a set. I mean, I already shot on that set as a big set. So now we're just doing the inserts. I didn't really have to do any lighting or anything. It was just really grab the camera and point it. And I was like, wow, this is super easy. So DP comes up to me after that and goes, hey, we got a full-on second unit next week. I want you to do it. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. And as soon as I turn around, I go, oh, shoot, what have I got myself into? Do I even know how to light a scene? It's one thing to walk into a set that you've been working as an assistant or as an operator and all you're doing is pick it up. But all of a sudden now it's like, okay. So I was like, I know what I've committed. This is what I want to do, so let's do it.
So if I can just to the audience, if I can just remind us of two things. So two big life lessons here. One, fake it till you make it. And two, Onno would not have gotten anything if he had not just asked. So just ask and then fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So anyway, carry
absolutely.
on.
No, you're absolutely right. If you don't ask, you don't get. And that's the way I am with a lot of things. And that fake it till you make it, absolutely. But I was in a position where, I had like 4 days before we actually were going to shoot the second unit day. I was like, you know what?
Googling how to be a DOP.
Yeah, but it's like I just can't make this up. So fortunate, it's on the bigger dramatic productions, there were diagrams of the spaces we were going to film in. There's some of the sets were already built, so I could walk up to the sets and have a look. And at a certain point, I grabbed the main unit DP and I said, hey, during lunch, can we go for a little walk to those sets and just pick your brain about how to do this? And he said, absolutely. So next thing I know, we're over there having a look. And the fortunate thing with being as this position for me as learning and as, sort of the second unit DP, I got to follow suit to what the main unit DP has said. He is in charge of the tone, of the mood, of everything. So what I realized very quickly, it's a great line, is just come up and go, what were your thoughts? Because you're the main unit DP, you have an idea, I'm just going to follow your suit. So tell me. And so he actually started coming up going, okay, so I would do this coming through the window. I would do this overhead and I would fill him in with this and I would do this and this. And it was like, oh my God, this is great. So I'm writing all this down, writing it all down. And it's like, oh my God, I got the recipe to how to light these sets. And I love it. And so then, of course, I'm sitting there. So I showed it to the gaffer. We set it all up. We start filming. And then, of course, there comes the curveball. Now the director goes, yeah, but I'd love to do this and this. And I was like, okay, well, then we did that. So, okay, so we'll just move the lights around here. We'll put the camera here. and off we go. And you know what? Oh my God, I was so nervous that whole day, but it worked. We got the shots done in the amount of time we needed. I thought it would look really good. And the next day, I'm back on main unit as an operator. DP comes up, goes, "Hey, how'd it go?" I go, "Oh my God, thank you so much. It was so much fun." And he goes, "Good, because we got another 2 days next week." I was like, yeah. So that started a relationship with this DP, and I did this. I ended up doing this for 2 more shows with him, where I was his B camera operator, and then I'd spell off and do all these sort of second units.
And tell us about those shows. What shows were they?
So that was Damien, and then I did a show called Incorporated with him as well. Can't remember who the network was for. And then after that, my God, I can't remember what the third show was, but set that tone. So I loved it. And so at this point in time, I'm sitting there in a path going, okay, you know what? I'm going to start working, because this is also where in Toronto, and it happened sort of around, I want to say around 2000, you started seeing a lot of sort of alternating DPs. The shows, and more so, the episodic stuff in dramatic episodic stuff in Toronto was starting to get such a larger scale that they started having alternate DPs. Mm-hmm. So I started suddenly going, okay, if I'm on a show as an operator and there's alternating DPs, usually the alternating DP will sort of shoot his own second unit the week after he's finished his episode. And I was like, okay, so let me be careful and try to only get on jobs where there's only one DP. So that way I can have that second unit DP position. So there's a few jobs that I went in for interviews, met DPs, and we're talking, and I go, okay, so do you have, what's the makeup of the show? Is there an alternating DP? And they say yes. And I was like, okay, you know what? Right here, I said, I hate to say it, but I'm going to turn the gig down. And they're like, why? I said, well, really, I want to focus on DPing. But right now, working as an operator, I'm on set. I'm watching how you guys are lighting everything. I can learn a lot. If I were to sort of say, hey, you know what, this is it, I'm only going to DP from now on, I felt that I didn't have enough background knowledge for different situations and different areas that I could learn from. So I said, I'm not quite ready yet to upgrade 100% to DPN, and I still want to learn. So there's a few shows that I turned down. There's a few shows that I did. An interesting show that I loved, that I worked on as an operator, was Suits. I was hoping there was going to be a lot of second units on that, and there ended up being almost none. And so none of it came my way. So it's a show where, I banked on, my hunch of suddenly going, okay, let me only do a show with a single DP. And I did that. I did it for a season and a half. And then there was barely any second units. So I was like, anyway, can't win them all.
So what would you say?
After that, a show.
Onno, what would you say is the most challenging part of working as a cinematographer in DOP? What do you think the most difficult part of the job is, and what's the most difficult project you've worked on?
I would say the most difficult part of the job is basically juggling all the elements. And when I say elements, it's when you walk onto a set, you have so many different departments. Everybody does their part, and it's trying to know ahead of time, going, okay, who's responsible for which elements, and also talking to the showrunner or the producing director, and talking to the director and the producer, and suddenly going, okay, what is the vision for this scene? Mm-hmm. And trying to break down people's description of what they want to do onto paper, and then sit there going, okay, how are we going to execute this? How are we going to make this happen? I would say that is the part that is the hardest. It's just basically coming up with a plan. It's every story, as simple as it may be, you need a story before you can start filming. I have found sometimes I'll just sit there going, oh, well, let me just grab the camera and just get a bunch of cool shots. And it's like, great, got a whole bunch of little shots. But you know what? Unless you tie them together with a story, they're just a bunch of shots and there's no story. So I find that is the hardest part, is just coming up with a plan on how to tell the story at hand.
And
that's what I would say is the hardest.
And what do you think the key is to creating great looking visuals? If you can kind of take us through what your process looks like. And I know you've mentioned earlier that you had a bit of a Reader's Digest kind of shotgun style trial by fire working on the shows that you'd worked on. But now that you've had the benefit of some hindsight, and you've had a lot more experience under your belt, worked on a number of shows, what do you think the key is to making them look great?
I would say for me, my key, and you know what, if I'm going to come up with like, you know, like a checklist of a few little, you know, like almost like a cheat sheet, I would say honestly, look at your background. Look at what is the background that we're setting up, because you're going to put the actor in it. I mean, something as simple as this podcast we're doing. Look at the background. Look what I have, and then look where I am sitting within it. Absolutely, I could turn. I mean, there's 3 more walls to the space. I could turn around, and the other 3 are just not as pleasing as this. So I would almost always say you walk onto a set, let the set dictate where you're gonna put the actors. Then for me, another big thing is, you know what, I love to have things backlit. So then it's like, okay, looking at the set, where are windows? Where could I have either, is it, you know, hard sunshine coming through? Is it an overcast day, so it's just a bit more of a soft light? Is it a night scene? Can I have like moon coming through it? Or, you know, are we on the second floor of a building and I could have, you know, like a street light, which gives us that beautiful orange glow coming in as well. So I would say, you know, then once you're on that set, you're looking around going, okay, where are the windows? How can I bring in some lights? How can I motivate stuff to make it, you know, moody and to make it interesting? You know, and then from there, I would say the other thing is, and that's more just once we start shooting, is giving your shots layers. And when I'm talking about layers, I'm talking about, you know, something in the background. This is the middle ground, and then maybe even something in the foreground. You know, because that creates depth. And then you can start, you know, once you're telling the story, you can start playing with focus. And then sitting there going, how can you then sort of, you know, accent certain pieces that need to be paid attention to or don't need to be paid attention to. Like a classic one is, you know what, if it's like a thriller and in the foreground you have an axe, you know, start the shot with the axe and then roll over to the people talking in the background, or the reverse, you know, what is the most important part? But that's, you know, a little bit of foreshadowing and layering the shot and giving it some depth. I mean, some of my, I would say the hardest for me, what I always, and I still find I'm a little bit struggling with, is night exteriors in a forest. It's like, how do you make that look believable and realistic, or, you know, does the audience buy it or not? But I gotta say, I find it the hardest, yet some of the stuff, nicest stuff I've ever done has been that. You add a little bit of fog in there, a little bit of mist with a hazer, and oh my God, all of a sudden these shots just come to life, and it's just beautiful.
Now, speaking of the hazer, so I've done a couple of productions where a DP has come in and just, you know, hazed the living crap out of the set, and it does make a difference, in my opinion. How important is the gear to your process? How important is gear overall to the overall look of a shot? And more importantly, or maybe more specifically, what do you think the most important pieces of gear are to getting that look?
I absolutely. And like a night scene, like we're just talking about the hazer. I mean, what is amazing is it just gives the shots a little bit of texture. And especially if it's a night scene and there's a lot of darkness, having a little bit of haze overall just brings up a little bit of that. So it's not as contrasty. The other thing is, like, you know what, if you're backlighting a haze, you know, through a forest, all of a sudden it adds that mystique creepiness. Like, is it like, you know, is it just like a little fog that's kind of rolling over the ground? So, you know, once again, does it add to the story? Absolutely, because it makes it a little spookier. If it's you know, if it's a thriller or whatever, it adds to that. So I would say for sure. You know, I've done it once. I was on a show where we were filming in a pizzeria. And there was one day we're shooting with a hazer, and the stuff just, it looked cinematic. It had depth. You could see it. For some reason, the following day we weren't allowed to use the hazer. And oh my God, the shot looked so different. It was, I mean, I wish I actually had those shots to show you guys, but it was like a night and day difference. And the only thing that changed was just a little bit of atmosphere. So I would, it's one of these tools that, you know what, yes, if we're allowed to use it, we will. There are limitations. Sometimes, you know, and often it's the location that just doesn't allow us. So we don't use it. And as for the rest of the gear, absolutely. I think all gear is very important. It's very vital. The other thing is I love having the camera moving, but I do like the camera moving in a cinematic and stylized and in a steady motion. Personally, I'm not somebody who, I mean, I like handheld, but for me, handheld needs to be fairly steady. There needs to be just a little bit of wiggle. If it's just all over the place, then it's more like I'm on a boat and I'm getting seasick. And just to me, that's too jarring. So I would sit there going, yeah, getting those kind of tools. Like, is it the fact that you have a dolly and you're handheld on the dolly and you're moving forward, and that's how you're doing your push in? Because that way, at least your push in is fairly straight and there's a little bit of motion. Versus if people are walking with the camera, it has a different, it's more of a bounce.
Right.
So
Motion
that's
on
where
the Z-axis.
I would sit there going, yeah, and I would absolutely sit there going, that makes a huge difference. At that point in time, do you sit there going, okay, do we go with the Steadicam? Does the Steadicam do that? Because the Steadicam on its arm, takes out the up and down motion. Versus, some of the little gimbals, they take out more the X and Y, but they don't take out the Z axis, which is the up and down axis. So I would say, yeah, you got to look at getting the right tools for the job. And once again, it comes down to what's the story? What are we trying to tell? How are we trying to tell it? That's where it comes down to. Then also when it comes down to lensing and cameras, if I know it's going to be like a horror show and we're doing a lot of nights, and right now, you got cameras, you can go up to 3200 ASA. So that's a light sensitivity that, oh my God, you don't need a lot of lights to light it. You can go into a lot of places and just shoot available light. Shooting downtown on any busy street at night, you can almost now sit there going, you know what, I can just shoot with available light. I don't need to light it. So that makes a huge difference to help out, especially if we're going into like a big dark forested area and all of a sudden we've got to bring in a few lights. You know what, if I can get 2 or 3 more stops light out of the camera and not having to bring in extra big heavy lights, absolutely. Because then once again, these, the camera and their sensitivity, the less lights I need to use, it allows me to move faster. Because that's the one thing that it is at night. It's, everything just moves half the speed of normally you do a day. And if we can move it in a faster and efficient way, and if it means I can still create the shots with less lights, then, technically I should be able to get the, more shots for the director, which in the end always helps the edit.
So, clearly having the right tools matters. As far as tools go, one of the big tools that seems to be getting a lot of press lately is AI. How do you think AI is going to impact the film and television and video production business? And what do you think people can do to get ahead of the AI curve, or how can they best integrate AI into the work that they're doing now?
Whew, that's a loaded question. No, absolutely. AI is definitely going to be changing things. I think right now, versus depending on what level of AI we're talking about. I kid you not, there is a commercial on TV right now that is cartoon based. And I have a feeling that, and I've been trying to research it and can't come up with it, but I have a feeling that whole commercial was done AI. I think it was somebody at home punching in a bunch of keywords. It made an animated commercial. Then also, they punched in probably the script that they did have locked in. And then basically from there, all of a sudden the computer just spits out images. And from there, they were able to tweak their commercial. So I think it's happening more than we think. A thing I have been seeing, and I think where AI is helping some directors, is often I'm noticing some directors are coming out there and they're sitting there going, you know what? I have a vague idea of what I want, but I'm not 100% sure what I want. And that's where I find, if you can punch in some stuff in AI and go, hey, punch in these keywords, something pops up, and it's like, okay, that could be inspiring to people. And that's where I can see that a lot could happen also in the prep work, is where I see AI definitely helping out. Now, come down the road, it's like this little commercial. You know what? If we're going to see more and more of that, and if people aren't, are okay to just use, let's say, fictitious characters, then I could see AI coming up and doing all these, these shows for us, basically. So I feel it's scary. It's there's a lot of unknowns. It could go any which direction. And it really, I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to us as the consumer. Are we buying it? Are we enjoying it? Is that world? Now, that having said, on some productions, there are AI is happening, and it's more happening in the stunt world, and it is helping out because there'll be actors, they'll come in, they'll do full 3D body scans. Then they'll use a double. Somebody that looks similar, the stunt coordinator or stunt person will do the action, and then they'll morph those two together. And at that point in time, it's like, okay, now the stunt was done with basically the exact likeliness of that actor, and it was done in a safe manner. So in that sense, that is happening. I mean, that's where this whole strike was going on about the actors and everything was going, okay, to what extent does this now allow, for manipulation of things? So that's, oh my gosh, the unknown.
So speaking of jobs, when you are not working, what do you do, and how do you find that you get your next gigs?
When I'm not working, I feel that I'm constantly hustling. It's kind of interesting how I would say I've been in the industry for close to 30 years, and it still feels like I'm on a daily basis. I'm hustling for my next gig. I have seen, tried, true, and proven that over time, it's always been me reaching out to people, calling them up, reminding them I exist, or just cold calls going up. And I mean, cold calls, I would say my success ratio is about 1 in 1,000 in getting an actual gig out of a cold call. And I'll be honest, because often it's like, yeah, I have no idea what kind of a person that on the other end there could be. Mind you, you're proof of the pudding. This was a cold call that I initiated with you back, October, November, and look at the relationship that we have now. So it can happen. But otherwise than that, it's like I'm like right now. Yeah, it's January. I'm in a bit of a slow period, so I'm either trying to work on some personal projects, just because I have the time and I enjoy crafting images. And it's actually what I'm finding interesting is. While I'm creating these and making these videos, what I'm finding is really interesting is it's showing me and it's teaching me a little bit of the production side of things, of going, it's not just grab the camera and go off and shoot. It's like, okay, I have a story. I've written it down. Okay, what's the location? When can we get into that location? Okay, the actor that I want to use, when are they available? Just trying to orchestrate all these things. And all of a sudden, I find I'm getting a lot more respect for all the other little pieces and all the pieces that make the puzzle function. Because there's a lot of little elements. And then the most interesting part, what I'm really enjoying now, is in the editing process. I'm sitting there going, okay, I had a rough idea. I had all these shots. I had an idea of how I want the story to go. And now I'm in the process of editing it together. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, no. It's that idea I had isn't working for me. It's just too slow. There doesn't feel to be anything. But luckily, I've had a handful of different shots that I'm now actually combining them together. And it's helping to tell the story. So that's kind of what I'm doing to stay busy. And what else? Yeah, reaching out to people. It's a lot of coffees. Whenever there's any form of a social event that pops up, part of it is, because I want to have fun. You want to see people, but it's also the opportunity to see and meet new people. Through here in Toronto, there is a big hub of a lot of technology, rental houses, and they on a regular basis will usually have open houses. Part of it is to go see the gear, but part of it is also just to go see my fellow colleagues and to reach out and talk to them. For example, I went to one in November, ran into a DP. Next thing I know, after the seminar, we went off and had coffees for 2 hours, and in that conversation, we just talked about all sorts of stuff. He gave me a whole bunch of pointers on his thoughts on how to network. And I'm still going, okay, I didn't expect it to be that positive, but it turned out fantastic.
So big takeaways. Ask, because if you don't ask, you're not going to get it. Fake it till you make it, and network, which just means going out and talking to people and figuring out what makes them tick and what they're looking for, and then just trying to be available so that when opportunities arise, you've got the chance to be the person that they think of.
Absolutely. And then the other thing I would say in there is, today's technology, we all have phones and in the phone, you can shoot little videos. You can even edit them on your phone. I would say practice, and practice. I've had already a few situations where people have come up and they said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this and this. Can you show me any examples of stuff that you've done along that genre? And yeah, I mean, it could be something as simple as a product shot. Is it somebody pouring some whiskey into a glass? Do you put ice cubes in it? Do you not? Something as simple as a little 30-second, call it a whiskey spot or whatever. There's nothing from us stopping me from doing it at home and experimenting. So I would definitely say experiment a lot, practice, do stuff, and cut it together. And then at some point when you do have it done, don't be shy. Showcase it. Show people. Because feedback is the only way you're going to learn. And then that having said, the other thing I do is watch a lot of TV. I sit there going watching TV and sit there going, okay, what's the story that's being told? How are they telling the story? But also, what are the visual mediums that they're using to tell these stories? Like a lot of the, like right now I'm into a lot of the British crime dramas. And you look at the lighting there, that looks a lot more available light. And it's like, yeah, you know what? But I buy it. It looks great. And I got to say that right now, the Brits, story-wise, they got some of the best writers out there. Just phenomenal. But it's you're watching shows and you're sitting there going, oh, okay. And especially now, because, everything's on a streaming service. If I'm watching something and all of a sudden I go, hey, how'd that shot happen? Or what was the transition from that shot to that shot? You know what? Pause, play back, hit that little 10-second rewind switch, push it and watch it. And I've done it a few times where I watched it over and over and over. And there's one that I couldn't get. So you know what? I actually videotaped it or recorded it with my phone so that I could scroll it back super slowly to try to figure it out because it was happening so fast in the 10 seconds I didn't see it. And it's like, you know what? I hate to say it, but when I was in college in 90, 91, my God, I had to put a video camera to it.
70 years ago, I was a young man just coming out of the Dust Bowl.
No, but it's incredible. Technologies are great. As we just wrapped up saying how AI could, potentially, change all that, you know what, right now, you use it to your advantage. Experiment and play around.
So with all of that said, for any young and up-and-coming filmmakers, any people who are looking at getting into the business or who are struggling to kind of find some traction in this business, what advice would you give to these young pups, these greenhorns, as they're trying to make it in Tinseltown North or anywhere for that matter? What advice do you have for youngins coming up in the business?
Absolutely. For the young ones, I would say right now, probably the easiest place to start looking. And I got to say, using tools like Facebook, go out and try to, be a PA on as many productions as possible. Sure, maybe you already have shot some stuff or you want to shoot some more stuff or you're directed or, you already know what kind of, direction you want to go. Just get on set and watch. From being on set and offering up your services for free, you can learn a ton of stuff. And honestly, I don't see, most often if people are coming up to me and saying, hey, I want to offer up my services for free, you know what, I'll take it, because everybody helps. And you then at that point in time, you could take away from it what you want, but it allows you to get on set and to network. Even last year, I did a handful of little small volunteer jobs. And my regular guys and gals that I wanted to work with weren't available. So I went to the production manager, said, hey, you know what? I'm stuck to trying to find crew. Do you have any recommendations? They recommended like three key people for the key positions. And all of a sudden I was like, great. From that, I did another gig after that. And I hired all those 3 people back because it's like, you know what? Yeah. All of a sudden it's like, these people are willing, they're learning. They weren't shy to ask questions. When I said, hey, go get me that apple box, they actually went off and grabbed that apple box.
Right, you didn't get any Honey Crisps.
No. But yeah, so I would say right now, try to get out there and volunteer. The last year here in Toronto, partially, because of the strike in the States, it was a really slow year. And I was shocked how much is being filmed in Toronto once you start looking for it. There are a lot of productions going on. There's, all in different stages of production. And almost all of them, if you're coming out to volunteer as a position, absolutely, they're in need of people.
Awesome. Well, I guess that'll do it. So, Onno, thank you so much for participating in what really will be our inaugural podcast as part of the Billet Media YouTube channel and podcast. It's been great. I think having worked with you in the past, I can say it's an absolute pleasure, and you're definitely someone who knows what they're doing, is great to work with, and is deserving of all of the successes that you've been able to achieve in your career. So thank you very much for being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your experiences, your tips, your tribulations, and your trials. We'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks again, Onno.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Awesome. You too.